Good evening and welcome to tonight's driver's ed class. We are officially a little bit beyond the halfway point, and what better time to take a break from having class next week? We are going to celebrate the 4th of July, and we're just going to drive. We're not going to have to worry about being here on the computer and doing class. So, after tonight's class, we'll have 2 weeks left when we come back into session to finish up the content material that we need to cover in order for you to go and take your knowledge test with the state. So please sign in. We'll wait for the majority of people to be here. Tonight is very important because we're going to take a look and see what you know and what you don't know with a midterm test. So we're going to cover parking to start off with, and then from there we're going to get right into the midterm. So the other thing before we get into material, we're getting people and then we're losing people. So I'll wait for everybody to sign on. I need people to be diligent and sign up for drive time at the end of tonight. I don't have any openings tomorrow. Saturday, I have one opening, I believe, at 5 o'clock. Then we'll pick up driving on Tuesday. We're not going to drive on Monday. And we're going to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday of the following week. So we probably have about 8 days of driving. And for those of you that have only driven 2 or 3 times, this is your chance to grab 3, 4 drive times so we can get us up around 6 or 7 hours with 2 weeks left. That is our goal, because once your class is finished, a new class starts up and starts taking all these valuable drive times. So I'm just kind of going through here and seeing who is on, who we're missing. So it doesn't look too bad for the most part. I see a few people that aren't on, but let's get right into the content of tonight, and then we'll talk a little bit about the test. So what I'd like you to do is take out some paper and take a few notes about parking. At some point around our 3rd to 5th hour driving, we start getting into multiple parking techniques. There are actually 4 different types of parking that you should be familiar with and be able to perform. You just never know what the state's going to ask you to do. So angle parking, perpendicular parking, parallel parking, and backing into perpendicular spots. Those are the 4 types of parking that they could ask you to do. I would probably say for your driver's test, you're more apt to do perpendicular or backing into perpendicular. Every once in a while they'll do angle, every once in a while they'll do parallel, but for the most part, perpendicular, driving straight in at 90 degrees or backing in to those 90-degree parking spots. Now, I have tried to somewhat develop and do my own filming for these videos for parking, and I've only been able to do 2. So I've done actually 3. It's not parking, but backing is also included here tonight. But I've done a perpendicular video and I've done a parallel parking video that we'll see a little bit later tonight. I haven't done one for angle and I haven't done one for backing into parking spots. So we're going to have to just go by the notes that I'm going to give you. Now, the first thing I want to explain about parking is a technique. It is controlled by traffic law, meaning there are some places you can park, some places that you can't park. But for the most part, when you go into a parking lot, they have painted lines, and the goal is for you to stay between the lines. and try to equal out your vehicle on both sides, left and right, so other cars that are parking next to you can enter and leave their vehicle. One of the the bad parts about parking is that when you lose your lines, it's very hard to guide yourself next to another vehicle without a lot of practice. So if you practice parking next to cars without lines, it's doable, but it is more difficult. Now, there are three terms. Let's get right to some of the key points from the manual. In the manual, they talk about stopping, standing, and parking. And as we said before, it is somewhat regulated by signs and laws. So standing means you can stop to let people out of your car or pick someone who is already there. So think of an airport, okay? But you can't wait for someone or loading or unloading. Now that's where the airport would come into play here. Remember, it's people only. All right, so it's not delivery. When they say loading and unloading, airports are fine, but what they're talking about is really like um, Frito-Lay trucks, UPS trucks, things like that. So no stopping is the most restrictive, and you can't stop at the curb for any reason you can think of. So standing, it's a brief moment. And if you take a look at the school at Oyster River, it used to be painted in the front of the opening of the front entrance about standing, no stopping or standing. It used to be there. But the right lane coming into the high school is for standing, letting people in or out. The left lane is for travel. So if you're going to leave leave the high school, you should probably use the left lane. Now, of course, if the right lane isn't having anybody being dropped off, then of course you can probably still travel. I don't like traveling in that lane. On a busy day, there's just too many parked cars. I can't see cars backing out very well. So I would stay away from the right lane. So the whole key is to keep roadways and highways open, prevent blocking of areas to keep them clear, like in front of Market Basket, Shop and Save, any type of Hannaford, any type of area where you've got groceries or you're loading and unloading. You've got to be very careful about what's posted and what you're able to do and what you can't do. So, what I want you to write down in your notes, all parking signs will be white with red lettering. We want people to understand that red lettering indicates you cannot do something. So, parking is regulated by the red lettering. Usually, if you look around a parking lot, there will be signs indicating whether it's legal or illegal to park there and what the consequences will be. Now, in this snapshot that I have, people uh, will be towed if they park in the parking lot and they don't have a permit. Now, Durham's the same way at Marketplace. And what you'll find in this article is that if you are towed, there's going to be a fee associated with that service, okay? And here it says about $131 to be towed. I think it's less in Durham. I think it's right around 100 or a little bit less than 100 if they tow your vehicle or put a boot on your vehicle. So just remember, during the school year, don't park in the Marketplace parking lot unless you're using the bakery, Hannaford, Domino's, one of those businesses, because they'll watch. There's a person that will watch you as you leave your car where you're going. So if you go to Main Street or you go across the road like a UNH student, they're going to probably notify the towing company, and with a half hour, 15 minutes, your car is going to be towed. So don't take it for granted that it's only going to be for a quick pickup. I'm going to be okay, because they're pretty bad in Durham. Now, what would happen if you parked in front of a fire hydrant? And this has got to be an old snapshot. I've been using this for years and years, probably from the time that I started teaching. They will bust out the back windows. They had to respond to a fire. The only way that they could activate the hydrant where the water would actually flow is they can't go over the car, they can't go underneath the car. So they bust out your windows. And by the way, you're responsible for the repairs of your own vehicle. You have done something illegal, they can do that. And you can see that everybody's getting a good laugh. They can't believe that the firefighters have actually popped out the windows to get use of the hydrant. And the hydrant area will be X'd out with a yellow X indicating you're not supposed to park there. And I can see a sign, you just can't read it, but I would almost bet dozen to a donuts that it says no parking in front of the fire hydrant. Get out when you park your vehicle in the city. Look around to see if there are any indicators that you should not be parking in that particular area. A lot of times people will ask me, Mr. Toll, how close can I park to other vehicles? Well, as long as you don't hit the car, all right? As long as you don't hit the vehicle. Now, these two cars belong to people that know each other. They actually work together. They're trying to squeeze as many vehicles as they can into this parking garage, so they try to squeeze their vehicles close together in order to maybe get in another vehicle. And this was a video. I just can't find it any longer. I believe there's like an inch, inch and a half between those vehicles. So the question is, how close can you park to another vehicle as long as you don't hit it? Now, granted, if you park very close to a vehicle and someone wants to get into the car and there's issues, people will probably be a little angered and they may vandalize your vehicle. So I would not get so close where people can't get in their vehicle or that would set them off to do something to your car. So I would look around my car just to make sure that nobody did anything to it if I didn't park the best. So some key points to remember when parking: move as far away from traffic as possible. You do need to know this, so write this down. I don't think I have it on the midterm. I think it may come up on the final. But when you open up your car door on the driver's side, you don't want to fling the door open and cause problems with cars that are going by. So the closer you are to the curb, at least a foot or less, the more you can open up your door and not be a real problem to traffic. But if you're right on the left side of your parking spot on the parking line, when your door opens up, cars are going to have to go over the yellow line in order to avoid you. So close to the curb is always best. Now, anybody in the car other than the driver, try to avoid traffic, go out on the sidewalk side. When you leave your car, secure it, so lock it. Make sure you have your keys with you. People are still known to lock their keys in their car. Now with technology, we have, you know, our phones which can lock and unlock cars now, which is kind of cool. Use your parking brake. If you're on any type of an incline or decline, this will prevent the car from rolling, especially if you're in a manual transmission. And then if you're going to leave your parking spot, you need to check traffic with a rear view mirror check, side view mirror check, signal, look over your shoulder, and then you can leave your parking spot. You can drive away. But always check. Do the three checks you would do on a lane change: rear view, side view, shoulder, signal, and then come out. This was just an article that someone wrote in Dover that they got a parking ticket. They had paid the meter, but they were too far away from the curb. I thought this was a terrible thing for the parking person to do in Dover because they legally had paid for the parking spot, so that wasn't the question. The question was how close they were to the curb, and they were about 5 to 6 inches further away than they should have been. Okay, not ideal, but I think that's pretty cheap. I think if someone had a crash, then give them a ticket, but don't give them a ticket for being out too far. So here are some key points on parking. You must be off the paved or main travel portion of the road. In some areas, you will be towed. If it's not possible to pull completely off the road, you should be seen at least by 200 feet so people can get around. So we're talking about hills and corners here. So always look for a safe place that you should be parking your vehicle. Use parking lights, not emergency lights, unless necessary. Parking lights, okay, let's write this down. Parking lights and emergency lights are one and the same. The only difference is that when you use your parking lights or when you use your emergency lights, they flash. They're located the same color, they're the same light. Parking lights become emergency lights when they flash. And what I want you to write down and understand is that parking lights, no one's going to probably stop to see if you need help. Emergency lights, you will find police officers and some well-caring people will probably pull over to the side of the road and ask you, do you need any help? All right, so if you don't need help, use your parking lights. If you want someone to pull over, then use your emergency lights. Leave a note if your car is not movable. Let's say you run out of gas or there's a mechanical problem. Leave a note with your phone number, and I would probably call the local police to let them know, please don't tow my car. I'm coming back for it in the next 2 hours. I know someone that can fix the engine, or I'm getting gas, because the police are supposed to keep the roadways clear and safe. So if it looks like your vehicle is in an unsafe area, then they're going to probably tow your vehicle. Now, these situations are what I call common sense situations. And it's amazing how many people don't have common sense when it comes to driving. So the list or the litany of items that we have here should be familiar to you. You wouldn't park when your car is partially on a sidewalk, in intersection, on a crosswalk, on a bridge. Now, double parking at the top. I do want to mention that. Don't be upset at some of the delivery trucks that come to downtown Durham, because yes, they can stop and park in your lane. They're supposed to get as close as they can to the left, but they're basically taking up like half to 3/4 of your lane. They still can do that. But they can only do it for a short period of time. So this is why they're racing and trying to get the packages delivered quickly and then back into the truck and moving away. Because there aren't any parking spots that are big enough for those delivery trucks. So where do we put them? We let them park or stop and unload in a lane. So just be aware of that. Tunnels, of course, any place that blocks traffic makes sense. Any street where there's not clearance for other vehicles, in front of a driveway, common sense situations. Now, these are the ones that you just have to flat out write down, look at, and remember. 15 feet of a fire hydrant, that's about the length of a car. 20 feet of a crosswalk. 30 feet of a stop sign, yield sign, or traffic control. And by the way, Durham does not do this. They let cars park much closer than 30 feet. And that's why we're having issues. This is why the driver's ed car got T-boned years back, because we couldn't see a car coming out from Madbury Road. We'll see that a little bit later. Now, here's a question about fire. So I told you there will be a 5 in the number, and the only one is on the opposite side. There isn't a 5 on the same side. So 20 feet of a fire station, entrance 75 feet on the opposite side of the street, 50 feet of the nearest rail or railroad crossing. So these are numbers that you just have to write down, look at, try to find something that's going to help you remember what those numbers are. Let's talk about handicap parking. Handicap parking is designated by a blue sign with a person that is in a wheelchair. And if you park in those parking spots, this is the amount of money that you will be fined. I'm not going to test you on the amount of money, so you don't have to worry about that. But just look at the amounts. It can be pretty steep. Now, the access aisles, those are the areas off to the right and left of a van parking space where they've got to drop a lift down. So they're charging you less to be in those areas than it is for the actual fine to be in the handicap spot. So just know any area with the blue handicap designation, any crosshatch access aisles off to the sides, also you should not be parked. What could you do if you saw someone parked in those areas? You could call the police, you could take a picture, you could send a text message what you saw with a picture. There are ways that we can try to help those that need these spots to have access to them. Okay, let's talk about backing. Backing, usually your second or third time out with me, I want to see how you reverse a vehicle. Uh, in the past, I don't think they've done it recently, but in the past, they have had people go to an area near Hilton Park, near the Dover testing site, and they would have you back down around a corner or back out into a road. So this is a type of driving maneuver. Now, with most of the things that we talk about tonight, you need to realize that um, there are different ways to park. And the way that I teach parking and some of these different driving techniques, it's just the way that I do it, the way that I think people are going to be most successful. But if your parents are telling you to do something and you like the way your parents have taught you to do something and you're successful and you're consistent, by all means do it differently. I'm not looking to change what you do correct. I'm only concerned about making you better at what you're doing wrong. So if you're doing something wrong, I'm going to interject and try to explain why you should be looking at things a little bit differently and be a little bit more concerned about your outcome with parking or backing. Now with backing, and I'm going to go over this real quick, always think that if you've put your car in a driveway, at some point someone's going to be backing it out. So try to put your car in a place to be successful. When it comes to your driver's test and they tell you to back to the right or to the left, you need to know your right from your left. And what they're asking you to do is to move the back end of the vehicle. Don't worry about the front of the car. You should be worried about the back of the vehicle. Now, you can use your mirrors, you can look over your shoulder, you can use the backup camera, you could use anything that's available to you to find your way to the end of a driveway and into the roadway. But before you go out into the roadway, and this is probably one of the most important things I want you to write down, you should always stop and look for traffic before you pull out into traffic. So whether you're in reverse or whether you're in drive, stopping and checking is so important. Now, I think it's a good idea in a parking lot with parking spaces to use directionals. Directionals backing out of a driveway can be helpful to remind you which way you're turning the wheel, and it's somewhat helpful for people that are coming from on the main roadway, seeing a car with a light flashing in reverse. It kind of indicates which way the back end is going to go in a moment. Now, you should always end in the correct lane of traffic. Never put yourself in the middle. Never be crooked unless you absolutely have to, and there's no other options than to end in that direction. So here is my account of backing. So here's my video on backing. So that's my attempt at making a video. I had a drone, and my son was so helpful to do the videotaping for me. Uh, I want to do more of these, like with angle parking and backing into perpendicular, but I just haven't had the time. I never realized how much time it really takes to edit a video, to set it up and do all that other stuff. So that's just kind of an overview. I find a lot of times it's easier to learn from just seeing something. Angle parking is the easiest type of all parking that they'll ask you to do, or I'll have you do. It's usually found in downtown areas like on Main Street, Dover, and Somersworth, Durham. Fast food restaurants have angle parking because they want you coming in one way and then going around in the opposite. The thing you need to remember, it's always in one direction. So if someone's coming the other way, it's because they're confused. Doesn't mean it won't happen. It just shouldn't happen. Now, when it comes to parking with angle parking, you should be able to park in either direction, left or right. There isn't one side really more difficult than the other. If I had to say maybe one side better, probably left, because that's the side of the car that you're driving from, so you can actually see things a little bit better. So I would approach from the middle or slightly opposite the direction that you're going to be parking. The next thing you want to do is to use reference points. Now, when it comes to parking, I always like using reference points, places on the vehicle that we can line up and be consistent with what we're going to do. So in your notes, so you can always remember this, use the side mirror where it's going to be even with the first line of your parking spot. Now, once you're lined up in that area, you should be able to see the entire parking spot. There's not a portion of your parking area, especially between two cars, that is not visible to you. Now, once you start turning in, you should be in straight halfway in. So once you're halfway in, straighten your wheels and work on getting closer to the right or to the left. Now, to get out of the parking spot, you just do the opposite. You back out halfway, which would probably be right about where your seatbelt connector is located on the car. You're backing to the back bumper if there's a vehicle next to you. If there's no vehicle, go to the end of the painted line that's next to you, and then start your turning to the left or to the right to get out of your angle parking spot. But do it slow. That the other thing that you've got to remember is when you're parking, you should always be on your brake pedal when you're parking. So the minute you're going down the parking lane or parking lot looking for a spot, you're going to take your foot off the accelerator and now go to the brake pedal. And any type of movement, whether you want to speed up, that means let go of the brake pedal, or slow down, you're staying on the brake pedal. Most people have problems with positioning is because they've hovered over the gas pedal and they can't straighten the wheel. All right. Perpendicular parking, it's two-way traffic. It's easier to the left than the right. Try to be picky on which way you're going to park. Start turning when your wheel is even. Start turning the wheel when your bumper is even with the first parking light, and that's going to mean that your shoulder is going to be even with the line before your parking spot. Now, I spent a little bit more time on this video, so rather than do the PowerPoint right here, I'm going to click right into perpendicular parking.
Hi, I'm Kevin Toll with Peace, Love, and Safe Driving. Welcome to today's episode about perpendicular parking. We're going to talk about perpendicular parking to the left and perpendicular parking to the right and what makes it so difficult. We'll give you a few easy tips to solve those problems. One of the problems with perpendicular parking, it's the approach. Most people don't understand, or they forget, that it's two-way traffic. So you should always be in the correct lane as you approach. If you try to cheat to go into a parking spot early, you're bound to cut off your lines and your angles. When parking to the left, you should be as far as you possibly can at the end of the painted lines of the parking spots that are next to you. you should look out your side window and line up your side. You should line up your shoulder with one of the parking lines. If you take a look out the window from the driver's seat, your shoulder will be lined up with a parking line prior to the parking spot that you're going to be taking. The front bumper is now even with the first line of the parking spot you'll be parking in. Put on your signal, lightly let go of the brake, and gradually turn the wheel to the left. You still should be able to see the left parking light underneath your side mirror as you start to approach into your parking spot. Once you are straight, straighten up your wheel and go to the end of your parking spot. As you approach into your parking spot, use the lines of the parking spot in front of you to help center yourself in your parking spot, making sure that you do not go through the end line into the parking spot in front of you. Here's a car that is going in the middle of the traveling lane, starting to turn the wheel before the front bumper gets to the first line. So you're coming at an angle. You're probably cutting off a little bit of the left line and you're turning extremely sharp to get into your parking spot. Now you're in your parking spot, you're parallel to your lines, but if there were parked cars, you would have a problem. We're approaching the same parking spot, but we're going beyond the shoulder line, beyond the bumper with the first line. Now we're going to go far over into the right side of a parking spot, backing into the left spot, and now you're in your parking spot. Very close to the right side of the line of your parking spot. Plenty of room off to the left. It doesn't look that bad from the outside, but if there was a car to the right of us, we would have hit it. So let's just kind of go back and do each of those maneuvers and set up cones with a piece of wood and see if we would have hit cars. Okay, what we've done is we've set up some safety cones with a thin piece of wood to simulate where a side of a vehicle would be. We're basically about a foot off the line on either side. One of the problems with a vehicle, it does give you a reference as you pull in. Now we're going to lose these cones as we go into our parking spot, and that's very common for a new driver. They lose sight of what is to the left or the right of the vehicle because they're focused so much onto the front part of the car. So let's get in the car and take a look at not having good angles coming into your parking spot. I'm approaching from the middle of the traveling lane. I'm going to start my turn a little bit early. This is a common problem for most people. They try to get in at the very top of the white line, and then they find that they're going to hit the car to the right, so they turn real sharp to the left. Now you notice that we didn't hit the cones, but we are on the line to the left of our parking spot. Never want to hit a car. Approach from the middle again. This time we're going to go a little bit beyond the shoulder line and the bumper with the first line of your parking spot. So this is going to be a late turn into a parking spot. So here we are turning very, very lately. As you see, hitting the cone, hitting the wood. It would have been a car. If you have a new driver, you don't have a safety brake where you could stop the car. You've just had your first crash. Let's talk about one of the most difficult things of perpendicular parking. Maybe not so much getting in, but a lot of people forget that they've got to get out of their parking spot. And a lot of times when you're going to be backing to the right, now you can back to the left or to the right out of a perpendicular parking spot, but here's a person that only looks to the right, doesn't look to the left, and starts turning the wheel way too early. Notice, hits the piece of wood. That would be scraping up on the side of a car. You now have another crash because you don't focus your attention to the front of the vehicle. Let's go back in and do it the right way. Okay, let's talk about how to get out of a parking spot correctly and safely. You have a choice. You can back to the left or you could back to the right out of a perpendicular parking spot, so it doesn't matter which way that you go. I prefer always backing to the left because it's going to be a wider turn. It's not going to be quite as sharp as the one to the right. But the most important thing to remember about backing out of a perpendicular parking spot is to have your rear view mirror and your side view mirrors adjusted, because even though you're focusing your attention to the right or to the left, what could be coming down the traveling lane, you got to remember there are parked cars behind you in a busy parking lot. And if they're backing out at the same time that you're backing out, and they're not looking at you and you're not looking at them, you are now on a crash course and you're going to hit each other. So my recommendation for backing out of any parking spot is to go out left, right, check, go out 6 inches, stop, look again, go out a little bit further, check, check. When you see that no one's coming and you're halfway out would bring your body to the end of the painted parking lines on either side. No one's backing out of a parking spot. No traffic is coming down in either direction. You now can perform your maneuver to the left. So we're going to turn sharp to the left, and that is going to bring us way over onto the left side of the parking lot. Then we can straighten up. You may not be able to get fully straight, but at least you're not going to be hitting a car backing out of a parking spot. Let's take a look at what it would look like if you were to back out from the right. So let's go back into the parking spot. We line up our shoulder with the line prior to the parking spot that we want. We check our rear view mirror, no traffic's coming towards us. We start our turn, we do hand over hand for a quicker, smoother turn. We're coming into our parking spot, we're almost completely straight. We use the lines in front of us. We straighten up our wheel. We go the rest of the way in, trying to get equal space on both sides. So let's back to the right. So putting on your signal, looking both directions, going out 6 inches or so, checking, going out a little bit further, because if there was a car coming, they'd see your backup lights and they would stop to let you out. Now we're at the very end of the painted lines to the right and to the left of us. We are now going to gradually turn to the right till we cleared the car to the left, and now we turn the rest of the way. But notice you're not going to be able to get straight because you have to back out halfway. This is when you put it in drive, you straighten up your car, and you get over into the correct side of your traveling lane. Now for the most difficult way to perpendicular park is to the right. The reason being is traffic is supposed to stay over to the right. But in order to get into that parking spot between the cones, I have to bring my vehicle all the way over as far as I can to the end of the painted lines to the left of me. I am still going to line up my shoulder with the line of the parking spot prior to the parking spot that I want. I put on my signal, and now I start my turn. Hand over hand. Notice I'm not going to hit the cone to the left, which is very common. I wait till I'm straight, and I straighten up my wheel. I approach my parking spot to the furthest point to the left. I line up my shoulder with the line prior to my parking spot. I hesitate. I let go of the brake. I go hand over hand. Watch that I don't hit the cone with the wood. That would be a car. I straighten up my wheel. And now I'm perfectly centered in my parking spot. I approach my parking spot as far to the left as I possibly can without getting too close to the cars that are to the left of me. I line up my shoulder with a line prior to the spot that I want. I hesitate for a moment. I let go of the brake. I go hand over hand. Notice the left corner is not getting too close to the cones in the board where there would be a car. I wait till I'm straightened up. And now I'm centered in my parking spot, making sure that I don't go too deep. Okay, now we're going to back out of the parking spot. Most people that park to the right will have a tendency to want to back out to the right. So what they normally don't do is they don't use your signal. You got to remember, when you use the signal coming out of a parking spot, it gets people attention. A lot of people say, why do I have to use my directional with backing out of a parking spot? there is no guessing which way the car is going. They see the backup lights, they see the directional, it gets their attention. You don't want people to be backing up the same time that you are. You don't want people going around your vehicle while you're trying to get out. So you look over your right shoulder if you're backing to the right, you look both ways, you go out about 6 inches. You want people to see your backup lights, your directional. If no one's coming by and you can't see, you're going to go out a little bit further. When you're about halfway out, you're going to start to slowly turn to the right. Notice we're no longer going to hit that piece of wood. Now we're going to be a little bit crooked, but what we do is we stop, we straighten up our wheel, and we pull over to the correct side of the road if more traffic is going to be coming down the parking spot.
So that's a rundown of perpendicular parking to the left and to the right. I know it's a little bit longer than the backing one. I wanted to get into it a little bit more detail because I do believe it's probably the most difficult type of parking to do. It's the parking that we have available to us the most, and I was having people ask for something that was a little bit more of a lengthy video, so I've been putting this out. And actually, I'm quite pleased with the people that have viewed this and have made some comments about it on YouTube. So I'm on my way to YouTube fandom to make videos for people on how to park. The next one I want to do is parallel parking. And parallel parking seems to be the parking that most people will shy away from, that they're afraid to do. And it's basically because they've never learned to set up the vehicle correctly, to have reference points, and they let their nerves get to them when it comes time to park in a city with traffic that's coming up behind them. I think learning to parallel park is easy, but when you do have vehicles that are kind of going around you or maybe beeping your horn, you tend to go a little bit faster than normal, which is going to change your reference points and your angles, and you're probably not going to be happy with parallel parking. But with practice, you can get much, much better at it. And there are different ways to parallel park, and most textbooks teach it in all the way to the right and all the way to the left type of maneuver, so 2 steps. I break it down into 3 steps, but let me show you some bad parallel parking. I thought this was kind of funny.
Oh my god. Is she serious? Or she's
Yeah.
giving up?
I hope she's trying to turn around now.
No, she's
No,
not.
she's gonna hit the truck. Yep, she hit us.
Wow, this bitch is dumb, dude.
Did you feel that?
Yeah.
She hit us.
Yeah, you feel it as soon as she. That's why her fucking car's all dented up on the side, because you don't know how to fucking drive. She hits us again. She's gonna go tell her something.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty embarrassing that you hit somebody's car. Um, I would have stopped after the first bump. I wouldn't have tried to do it again, especially knowing that there are people there watching as you hit their vehicle. That should have never happened. And what the reason why it did happen is that the angle was wrong, and they started way too late to get into the parking spot. So the correct way to parallel park is to stop before your empty parking spot. Pull up about a foot and a half, 2 feet from the parked car in front of your parking spot. You want to take the time to tip your side mirror down. And the way that I teach parallel parking is in the 3 steps, turning all the way to the right, going back straight, and then turning all the way left. So what we're trying to do is create a 45-degree angle. Once we have that 45-degree angle, we straighten our wheels and we back up towards the curb. Once we get close to the curb within about a foot, we turn our wheel all the way to the left, which will allow our car to get into the parking spot close enough to the curb, yet we're not going into the car behind us. So if you need to make readjustments, you can make readjustments. If it looks like you're going to hit the curb, of course, don't. Pull forward, straighten out, and then readjust. So your side mirrors and your backup camera are so important with parallel parking. So here's the video that I did for parallel parking.
Let's take a look today at one of the hardest driving maneuvers, parallel parking. Three easy steps to parallel parking: right, straight, and left. What's so hard about parallel parking? With a little bit of practice, anybody can do it.
As you saw, it really isn't that difficult. I think I'm going to be able to teach most of you to be able to do it after your second try. You'll probably be able to do this without any help from me. So this is usually around our sixth or seventh time out driving that we try parallel parking. And we use that area that I filmed, which is in Durham. It's a lot better than using Main Street. So I always try to teach techniques in places where it's extremely quiet, where we can work on our technique and then start using cars and moving traffic to make it a little bit more challenging. Now, the last type of parking that we're going to do is called pull pass and back into a perpendicular parking spot. And the key to this, and I haven't done a video for this yet, but if you want to write down in your notes, is that once you find your parking spot, you need to go 3 parking lines up from the spot that you want to start the maneuver. Most people make a mistake. They don't go far enough past to back into the spot in reverse. So try to be about 5 feet away from the end line of your parking spot. Go up those 3 white lines, 3 spots. Make sure that your shoulder is even with that third line. Use your right turn signal to indicate you're backing to the right. Tip your right side mirror down like we did with parallel parking. You're going to use your side mirror as you guide yourself into your parking spot. Now you basically want to turn the wheel ever so slightly once you go past that third line by about 10 inches to a foot. That's going to put your back bumper just prior to the spot that you're backing into. And you're turning the wheel quite sharp at this point. You're looking at your backup camera or your right side mirror. You're getting a gauge of what your positioning is going to look like. Once you're about halfway in, you can tell by your side mirrors, do you need to go more to the right? Do you need to go more to the left? And you should be able to make some minor adjustments as you go in. Straighten your wheels once you're halfway in, and then back the rest of the way into the parking spot. So this is one of the last type of parkings that we go over. I think it's one that they like to throw at you on your driver's test because they can find an opportunity for you to do it. Parallel parking at a testing site, they've got to set it up. It's not something that they can just find automatically. That's why they don't do it quite as often as they probably should. So this is a basic overview of parking skills. So hopefully this was somewhat helpful to you, that you had maybe some questions answered, but feel free to contact me at any point after driver's ed. Some of these videos that I did personally are still on YouTube that people are watching right now. But find a way that gets you in consistently. It doesn't have to necessarily be my way. It could be a way that your parents have taught you, or find a way that you like to set up your reference points and do it that way. Now, I'm going to give you the password to the midterm because it's different than what we've been doing for homework. So I'm going to do that in a moment. But I do want everyone at some point tonight or tomorrow to text me when you're able to drive next week and give me multiple days. It'd be preferable if you start on Tuesday, go from Tuesday to Tuesday, a full week next week of when you're able to drive each day. I can't drive in the morning, can do the afternoon, can do the afternoon, can't do the morning. And I'm going to try to build out the whole week so I can maximize and get the most people in and to drive with you to get you at least to the halfway or the 3/4 point into driver's ed so we can cruise into the last 2 weeks and not feel so crunched. So that's it. Let me let me type in the password. Whoop, that's not what I want. If you do not have access to Facebook and you can't get the link to the midterm, I'm going to have to find a way to get it to you. So you're going to have to text me that you need the link because it's more difficult for me to individually send it out to you. So you have to go to the Facebook page, click on the link, and this is your password for today. It's today's date. All right. So that is the password that will be used to get you in for tonight's midterm. Try to do it on your own. I don't want you to use your notes or any books. This gives you a chance to know the information, what you do know, what you don't know. It will give you the correct answer at the end, so you'll have a basic idea of what you got wrong. Make some notes of it so you can use it to study by for the final. It's mostly on sign, so take your time. You've got plenty of time. You've got a whole hour to do it. So good luck. It's multiple choice, and it does allow you to go back. If you want to go back and look at answers, you can do that. But be very careful going back because it can be a little bit glitchy. So that is it. All right. So have a good night. If you got any questions, feel free to text me and let me know. All right. Bye.